Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Jeremiah, and welcome back to the Hill Shadows podcast. With me tonight is your co-host, Ashley. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, except you keep starting without telling me you're starting.
Well, the first time I might have
did
caught you by
something
surprise, but the second time it's on you, okay? If we rebooted, you should know.
No, you have to say.
Anyway, it's our 45th episode, and hope everybody's having a wonderful week. If life seems a little bit too mundane and ordinary for you guys, if everything just seems too plain, maybe you need a taste of the paranormal, and that's the kind of things we cover here. We go over encounters people have with things they just cannot explain every week. So if you guys like that kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any encounters you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can send those to us at hillshadowsky@yahoo.com. That's right, we still use Yahoo for some unknown reason. But we'd love to hear from you guys. Last week, we talked about the Native American folklore, the Pukwudgie, and encounters people were having with these things. And this episode, I have came up with some encounters people have had with black-eyed children. I also have one story somebody wrote about maybe some synchronicities, and have another one I can't really remember exactly what it is.
Mine are all Bigfoot things.
And you probably just recently, were you able to find any black-eyed children encounters?
I didn't look for a single one.
You didn't even try?
I didn't know I was supposed to.
Okay. Well, that was like a last-minute thing, so not a big deal. Do you want to start off tonight, or you want me to start off tonight?
I can.
Is there anything we should talk about before we get into it? Like, what has happened over the past week? I know we were just watching a pretty interesting documentary about the Colorado.
Oh, just now.
Oh, what was drones? Like the Colorado drones. They initially thought they were drones, and then it ended up they were actually intelligent.
Possibly.
Possible intelligent.
They look like what do you call it?
Amoeba.
Amoeba.
Right.
Sorry, amoeba.
It was a pretty interesting documentary. I believe it just came out on YouTube tonight or maybe yesterday. I'll be sure to post the link down in the description so you guys can check that out. Worth seeing, I would say.
I liked it.
Okay.
Well, I haven't
Pretty
seen all of it just yet, but what I have watched was quite interesting to me. I thought it was pretty cool that all these little things, the lights, whatever they are, a lot of them look like things that like in our oceans, like jellyfish, or like squid looking, or
I also heard her saying like they were two-dimensional type beings, and that life could form from two-dimensional.
Right. There was another thing she was talking about. Someone sent her a video, and to the naked eye, I guess it wasn't visible, but it's like just shots, over and over. And I guess when looking back at it, there were like these little light anomalies throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you like slow them down and stop it, several of them looked like a type of insect. Like little antenna. I don't know, some look like a little bee or something. It was pretty interesting.
I mean, we're kind of foolish to think any kind of life that may exist outside of our planet would look like we would expect it to look like.
Yeah, because if our light spectrum, the frequency would go down just the smallest bit, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't be able to see, what we see now. Like, our reality would be something totally different. But
yeah, cool little short documentary you guys should check out.
Let me pull this up real quick.
If you guys are enjoying the video, I want to encourage you to hit the like button. It really does help us out. with getting our videos recommended by the algorithm. We really appreciate it. And like I said earlier, make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss any of our videos. We'd love to have you be a part of our little community we have going on here at Hill Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I get into the stories...
Wait, I thought I was supposed to do this first.
You're going to.
Okay,
but
sorry.
I just wanted to go into like a little backstory on Black-Eyed Children, like Wikipedia.
Well, mine's not about that, so...
So there's no point in doing it yet?
No, just wait a second.
Okay, well go ahead.
Because mine's about Bigfoot. Maybe people have, know about this. I'm sure a lot of people do, but...
Well, let's hear it.
I didn't know about this person. So evidently, a mayor in Pennsylvania has had some type of encounter with the Bigfoot.
Interesting.
And this, I guess, was like a news report that was done about him recalling, his encounter.
Okay.
Okay. So, I think it's at Riegelsville. Mayor Greg Stokes says he was out camping in Pike County back in July of 1984. At one point during the trip, he recalls hearing something large and menacing on 2 feet rustling outside of his tent. Then, he says, he heard a scream that was horrifying and still haunting. This thing let out the scream from hell. I sat bolt upright in my tent. This thing vibrated my body so hard I couldn't see the inside of the tent. And it had this huge, huge resonance. And it was close enough to me that I could hear its lips pop apart when it actually started to scream. It was a very, very low guttural tone, recalls Stokes. Mayor Stokes says he's 99% sure it was Bigfoot, but leaves the 1% of doubt only because he didn't actually see it. He spent the last 37 years reading and researching Sasquatch and meeting other people with similar experiences. The Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project has about 20,000 members, and the Bucks County chapter is just getting started. There's about 400 to 600 sightings that are reported a year. There's probably triple that number that actually happened, but people don't report them because they're afraid of ridicule. I've had people laugh at me, and I don't care, he says. Stokes is the keynote speaker at the next meeting. And just had his goal is to share stories. This was actually done in 2022, but that's basically it. Or I'm sorry, November 30th of 2021. I thought that was interesting. It just gives a bit more, validation, right? That a mayor is.
Yeah, you don't really hear too many authority figures like bringing up their encounters. A lot of times they're afraid somebody's gonna say they were crazy.
Right. Also, did you know that what is it? At the Western Air Defense Sector, like they have like a statue of Bigfoot in there. They've actually kind of adopted it as their mascot.
No, I did not know that.
I didn't either. I just kind of ran across that. Thought it was an interesting tidbit.
What's the place that we're gonna travel to soon?
It's the Trolls thing.
Yeah.
Elizabeth? Is it Elizabeth?
I want to say it's outside of Elizabethtown. Is it? I can't think of the name.
I don't know. I'll look it up.
Anyway, I'll be sure to get some really good videos.
I always have something in my eye.
It's a really cool looking place. They have like these wooden trolls they've made. There's like 3 of them, and all of them are with within a 2-mile hike. So. And it's only what, hour and a half from where we're at,
Shepherdsville,
something like that. So.
Shepherdsville, Kentucky.
Definitely a trip we're gonna make this summer, and
Bernheim.
Bernheim.
The Arboretum.
It looks like a really cool place, and would make for a really awesome video, and it's something that we're both very
it's gonna be pretty cool. I think.
interested in covering. So.
Yeah.
Now, before I get into my stories of Black-Eyed Children, I just want to read a little background on what Black-Eyed Children are, and
haven't we talked about this briefly?
We have briefly, yeah. I don't know that I may have covered an encounter with them before. I don't know.
Okay.
But Wikipedia says that Black-Eyed Children or Black-Eyed Kids in American contemporary legend are paranormal creatures.
Creatures.
Let me put my reading glasses on here. That resemble children between ages 6 and 16 with pale skin and black eyes who are reportedly seen hitchhiking or begging or are encountered on doorsteps of residential homes. So I guess just whatever your nightmare scenario is, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more backstory on some the horror film Black Eyed Kids, which came out in 2012, but really doesn't have much to do with my stories here. So I guess I'll just randomly pick one of these things because I've got like 3 different encounters, not really crazy long or anything. And I found these on Reddit. I think I found all of them on Reddit. And this one's titled My Encounter with Black-Eyed Children. And this one's posted by the user One Blaze 3 years ago.
Was this not originally a creepypasta thing, or is this something like real? People have truly encountered.
I'm not certain.
Sorry, you have a little hair right there. Oops.
Where it originated at, but
I'm trying to help you, man.
oh, here.
Sorry. This cat.
Alright. Here we go. Earlier this month, to celebrate the 4th of July, I was having a few drinks with my parents, and as we were discussing several different topics, we eventually stumbled into sharing some ghost stories. I mean, we've all heard each other's usual stories before, but that night, I brought up something that I have struggled to come to terms with for years. This took place when I was around 10 years old. I'm 25 now, so this was about 15 years ago, to give you a perspective of time. My friends lived in different neighborhoods around town, so since I was really the only kid of my age group who lived in my little part of the suburb, I would occupy my free time by riding my Little Mermaid bicycle on the streets. It was a very lax part of the township, typical of the residential areas that surrounded the city. One summer evening, I was wasting some time before dinner by pedaling my bike up the street when I was rolling to the T-shaped intersection that I would always stop and turn around at. I noticed 2 girls my age sitting peacefully in front of the house opposite the intersection. They were staring at me almost as if they were aware of my imminent arrival. Both were wearing light-colored nightgowns, which I thought was a bit strange considering the time of day and, well, being outside. I can't recall if they were twins. Something tells me they were, but I can't really remember much detail of their faces at all. As I got closer to the intersection on my bike, they called out to me cheerfully, beckoning me with jubilant arm motions to come towards them, and I did. I felt a rush of excitement toil over me at the thought of having a couple friends to play with, so I really wasn't asking why they were outside in nightgowns, or even where they came from. You see, the people that owned the house behind them were quite elderly. I mean, I rarely ever saw them leave their house at all. The edges of the property were quite grown over, which made the house look neatly nestled away from the road. The only thing I thought was strange at the time was that the slight hill that was their front lawn was covered in decorative river rocks, the ones that are smoothly molded by water and look like dinosaur eggs. And that's what the girls were sitting on, barefoot and in nightgowns. How uncomfortable, I thought. They were both talking to me, telling me that I should come play with them, and I said I'd love to, but I would have to bike home first and let my mom know where I'd be. They seemed less than thrilled at that idea, and were definitely trying their hardest to coax me into staying with them, telling me I didn't need to tell my mom and that she wasn't that far away. I insisted I would be back very shortly and hopped on my bike and pedaled home. When I arrived back at my house, I threw my bike onto the grass and ran up to the front door, opening it partially to ask my mom if it was all right if I played with the 2 girls up the street. My mom turned around and seemed visibly confused, but she agreed, so I went back. I rode up to the house at the intersection, and they weren't there. I was a little disappointed. I even felt bad for having to run home first. I walked my bike up the driveway and then proceeded to walk up to the door, knocking on it gently. An elderly woman opened the door, and I told her the girls asked me if I could play with them. "What girls?" she asked. A puzzled look spread across her face. "There were 2 girls outside just a bit ago. They asked if I could play with them." "No kids here. You know you're the only kid on this street," and she shut the door. I never saw or heard of the girls again. As I was telling this story to my parents, I paused midway to make the disclaimer that I wasn't sure if this was some kind of extremely detailed dream that I had mixed up with my memories, or if it actually happened. My mom, though she told me she actually remembered that day because she never remembered any children living on our streets besides me, and it stuck out to her that I had asked to play with the two girls up the road. So after explaining the story to my parents, I did some research. Apparently the phenomena of supernatural beings disguised as children, black-eyed children, is an urban legend. I had no knowledge of this being a thing, and although it's debunked, I will say that it's eerily similar to what I experienced with these girls. I don't remember them having black eyes. In fact, it's almost as if their faces are blurred from my memory entirely. They weren't acting ominous or intimidating, but they wanted me to stay with them in the worst way. Ghosts, a glitch in the system, black-eyed children, or whatever, I'm struggling to find an explanation, as it's been one of the most puzzling things I've ever experienced.
Sounds like some ghosts to me. Like,
Right, yeah.
you know, in their little
Very,
gowns, like colonial or.
very textbook ghost children, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
They have clothing on from that time period, and were there one minute, not the next. You know, I don't know. They were interacting a bit more than you would think a ghost would, as far as.
I don't know though, because there are stories about people having full conversations with ghosts.
That's true. That does happen sometimes. Also, I want to say, we apologize for the volume on the last video.
Yeah,
it was a little low.
It was incredibly low.
We're still kind of getting the hang of things here with our new equipment, and every week we're trying to see what optimizes everything. So this week we've tried something a little different. So one way or another, I'm gonna make it so it's an improvement, and each week should be in some way. But yeah, I've got two more on the black-eyed children phenomenon.
Go for it.
And do you have anything else you want to?
I have another encounter with a Bigfoot.
Now this one is titled "My Personal Encounter with Black-Eyed Children," me, and it's posted by the user Kane1212, and this one comes from 9 years back, so a little bit further in the past than most of the things we read, but we'll see if it's a good one. And as always, if you guys want to check these stories out on your own time, we will post the links in the description for you guys to check it out. I've never heard of the black-eyed children until I encountered them. Still not knowing who or what the hell they were, I did what any modern 25-year-old male would do. I Googled them. And boy, was I shocked that I wasn't the only one. Had I not seen them for myself, I would have just thought it to be another modern urban legend gone viral. Besides my girlfriend, I've only told my brother, who was into everything creepy and horror, for I knew he would be the only one to not judge me or try and commit me to a mental hospital. He's the one who said I should post it here. If this is the wrong sub, then please direct me to the right one. Keep in mind, I'm not a writer. Sorry for any grammar or spelling errors. I'm an accountant. And I can tell he's not a writer because those were all commas and there was not one period in that long sentence. I don't want upvotes or to try and impress anybody with a good read. I am simply trying to warn people that some things out in this world are beyond our comprehension, and if you hear a knock at the door, make sure you check before opening it. I wish I had. Here's my story. My girlfriend and I live in a small gated community in southern West Virginia called Glade Springs. The community has about 150 houses, a country club, and a steakhouse bar called Bunkers. Now anyone can come through the gate during the business hours of Bunkers, but after they close, the front security gate stops all traffic and makes sure you are a resident, and if you're a visitor, they call the house that you're going to verify that you are actually expecting them.
Fancy.
It is. Sometimes it's a hassle, but hey, don't have to worry about a robbery.
Just a black eye.
So imagine my surprise when my doorbell chimed at 3 a.m. I was jarred awake and wasn't sure if it wasn't just a dream, considering I had just went to bed shortly before and was probably just going into REM sleep. I rolled over and looked at the clock, noticing the time, and when my doorbell chimed again, I felt a cold chill run through my body. Not reading too much into it, it could be one of my neighbors as an emergency, right? I nonchalantly made my way to the door. Now I see how foolish I really was, and opened it. Luckily, the wrought iron storm door was still locked because who or what stood before me was not a resident of the community. Two young boys stood at my doorstep, one looking about 17 and another looking about 10, wearing dark hooded sweatshirts and jeans. The young one had shaggy dirt blonde hair and would only look down at the stone steps, and the older one had his hood pulled and his head tipped to where I could only see from half his nose down. My voice caught in my throat, and before I could even ask what they wanted, the older one spoke. His voice sounded forced and dry. There was no emotion or sincerity of what he said. I'm sorry to bother you and your girlfriend, but we need to come in your house and use your phone. We've been in an accident. I felt the familiar chill return to my whole body. How did he know my girlfriend was here? I wrote it off as my Tahoe and her Volkswagen was in the driveway, and I figured they just assumed. I tripped over my words. Something about these kids wasn't right, wasn't normal, wasn't human. I can bring you my cell phone and you can call. I don't get service inside here, so you have to stand on the sidewalk to call, I finally said nervously. Of course I was lying through my clenched teeth. I did not want these kids in my house. Well, my brother really needs to use your bathroom, Kane. We have to come in, the older one said, and that's when I went into a complete panic. He knew my name. I'm sorry, are you from here? How did you know my name? The words practically shook out of my mouth. That's when he became slightly hostile and demanded to be let inside, and I told them I was sorry, but I couldn't help them, and just as I was about to close the main door is when it happened. The both of them snapped their heads upwards and looked me straight in the eyes. Black. No iris, no pupil, no retina, just pure, deep black. I was paralyzed with fear. For a second, I thought those kids were just playing a really cruel joke and had snuck in the community somehow and had bought some of those freaky supernatural demon sclera contexts. That was until I heard ringing. It was like a ringing sound that you hear when you have a hearing test done, that digital high-pitched shrill ringing. And then the flashback started. I was suddenly a toddler again at my grandparents' house, sitting under the chestnut tree with my mother picking up the nuts and putting them in a large metal soup kettle. It was a crisp fall day. It's one of my earliest and dearest memories. I was about 3 and even had a picture, and one I hold very near to my heart. But then they were there, behind my mother. We locked eyes with their eyes still as black as night, and suddenly they smiled simultaneously. That's when everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was shaken awake, lying in the mudroom floor, my girlfriend standing over me with a worried look. What the hell, Kane? She asked. I had no idea how to answer her. My head had taken a good whack against the slate floor, and a bit of dried blood was stuck in my hair, but other than that, I was fine physically. I slowly remembered everything that had happened, and looked at the door. Daylight. I've never been so happy to see morning in all my life. I told my girlfriend everything that had happened, and honestly, I think she thought I had brain damage from hitting the floor, but she insisted she believed me. And then we Googled it, and I believe that's when she really started to believe me was then. I don't know who or what they are, or where they come from, but they are not of this world. I know that for a fact. For some reason, I had a lingering thought. I'm still not sure if they put the thought in my head or not, that they wanted me to know that even my memories aren't safe. They are very strong and seem to be growing in numbers. For some reason, they seem to not be able to hurt you physically unless you invite them in, which I don't know since either no one has ever let them in or the ones that have aren't around to tell their story anymore. But they can get your mind. Since that night, I feel as though I'm being watched. I see them out the corner of my eye occasionally. I'll look at my girlfriend while we're at the movies or dinner, and her eyes will be solid black for a split second. And worst of all, they took one of my most precious and often most reminiscent memories and turned it into something sinister, something that's now a constant reminder of the black-eyed children. That's pretty creepy. Forgot to post the picture in this one. Let's see what this is. Oh, this is the picture of the memory, correct? Yeah. So yeah, check that out. How about that? So, my advice, if you
Are the
guys,
black-eyed children hiding away
I
in
don't,
that
I don't
picture
see
anywhere?
him. This looks like someone right here getting out of the truck, man.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
My advice is if you if you have an encounter with these things, is do not let it in. Same with anything that may be evil that tries to gain access into your life or your residence. Advise that you claim the blood of Christ, and absolutely do not let anything like that in your house. You know. I've got one more about this particular topic, and I also have one about just random accounts of like high strangeness.
Okay.
That should be kind of interesting.
Go for it.
But I guess I'll finish off the black-eyed children ones. Like I said, I just have one more, and it's not a very long one. It's just another one I found on Reddit. This one's by the user. What does that say? Mucosal membrane.
Mucosal, yeah.
From 4 months ago, and it's titled "I've Encountered the Black-Eyed Children."
Okay. Let's see. All right. Are these people just making up stories? This is just crazy to me.
I don't know why would you make that up, though?
A writer, whether you say you're, I don't know if you're telling me I'm not a writer.
I mean, if you judge things on that basis, though, everybody could be making up everything, right?
That's just true.
So, I like to take people's stories at face value. Obviously, great claims require, a large amount of evidence. You gotta have more evidence the bigger your claim is. Otherwise, it's just kind of a claim, and no matter how fantastic it sounds.
Shouldn't there be like cameras and like he lived in a pretty nice neighborhood, gated community? Like there should have been some type of cameras on the buildings or somehow something. I don't know. Some type of security.
Well, if these things are in fact paranormal, then they're not going to show up on any kind of camera at all. Like, why do you think we haven't gotten footage of Bigfoot, man? I mean, there's something to it that we're just not figuring out. I'm not saying that Bigfoot's not real. I'm an avid believer. I just think there's something, what our technology is not capable of doing.
Maybe they're on a different spectrum of light that just comes in.
See, humans think they're so smart, man. Everybody's like, they have to be an animal or else we would have found them. Maybe we're just not that smart. And there are things that are more intelligent than we are.
Yeah.
And planes of existence that we're not on, that we have no access to, that other beings have figured out how to traverse. Right?
Yeah. Or they're just made up of a different frequency than we are, and that their reality is different than ours.
We do. I was thinking about that. We were watching some videos earlier about near-death experiences.
Yeah. I love that stuff.
People who have claimed to see the afterlife, and I truly believe, to hear them all talk about it, it's like when you die, it's like you're coming in from work, like you're returning from your journey. You just came back from doing life, right? Welcome home. Welcome back home. You're finally back where you originally belong.
Right.
With all your loved ones and everyone that's already went home, right?
Yeah.
And it's just it's like this world is created so our bodies tune in to the frequency of whatever it's putting out, right?
I guess. I don't know.
So it's something about that. Like, we can only pick up on things that are the right frequency.
It makes me excited to feel that feeling of blissfulness that everybody talks about.
Right, and everybody sees Jesus, right?
No, not always.
Not always.
No, like some people, it's very much like a psychedelical
right.
Psychedelic
it
experience.
Seems like a large portion do describe a robed figure.
Yeah, that's a common thing. Yeah.
Them,
Whoops! I keep hitting the.
It's.
Yeah,
I do want to.
It's different. The common thing that it's always like how amazing you feel.
Right.
Like it's all these positive, good words.
You never hear somebody like, man, I just wanted to come back.
No, that's not true either.
You have, I guess if you go to hell, right?
Absolute, like, scary,
I mean, if you go to, that would be like what? Like, people who've lived badly and then...
Not necessarily, because some of them...
I'm not familiar with...
Like, maybe that's just, like, some...
I would have to
to go back and tell people that, hey, there is this bad place too.
Right. Well, I don't think I've ever heard somebody actually say, like,
I don't want to go back.
yeah, I've never actually heard somebody state that they're ready to go back. I want to be back in my body.
Stay.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody wants to stay.
Yeah, because you come back to this pain, this.
Well, also to hear him say you're void of all emotion, like all the emotions that this body, like fear and anxiety and worry and all those things that this body brings to us, like when you're absent from it, those things are no longer there. So.
Unless you're in like hell or whatever.
Well, that is all those things, right? I guess it would be like, wherever you're at, you want to be in the good place, obviously. But
The Good Place. That was a good show.
That was an awesome show. Very good show. I have one more on the Black Eyed Children. I'm gonna wrap it up, and then after that, I have just some strange synchronicities, high strangeness, just some random stuff.
I'm gonna read this other thing after this though, and then you can take it away.
So yeah, as I said, mucosa membrane 4 months ago from Reddit. Links in the description. I've encountered the Black Eyed Children. All to count, but longtime lurker of the soul. An old friend hit me up. I started reminiscing and remembered this. I believe I've encountered the Black Eyed Children over a decade ago in rural Appalachia. This has always low-key disturbed me. Keeping in touch to this day, we've never brought it up again. We were at a local state park sort of place at between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. I remember we were parked alongside the woods and some picnic tables. It was pretty desolate. We were technically trespassing, and what we were doing there you can leave to your imagination.
They were both 17. So.
They were a 17 female and a 17-year-old male. Yeah. As our curfews were approaching and we were finishing up our time together, we experienced a very ominous feeling. He was in the driver's seat preparing to start the car and pull off. The car doesn't start. We sort of laughed it off, as it wasn't the first time, and talked. Suddenly, to the right, passenger side where I was sitting, we see faint lights coming out of the woods. The ominous feeling intensified. Emerging from the woods, there are 4 to 5 children, younger than us, like appearing to be 7 to 11 years old. I'm not going to claim they had black eyes. It was dark, and I don't remember, as I was pretty shook. I didn't read about the Black-Eyed Children lore phenomenon until years later, which described everything else that we experienced. All I can say is they were not normal. They didn't belong. The cabins at the park were not occupied. They weren't even getting rented out as if it were autumn or winter. We were miles from the park's hotel. There were no adults. They were absolutely out of place. What were the lights? I don't know, but the closest thing I can compare them to are glow sticks, as if they had opened a package of those novelty glow sticks that include bracelets, necklaces, or wands, but it wasn't like they were having fun or goofing off. They just stopped, stood there, and stared at us. He tried asking what they were doing here, if they were lost, where are their parents? No response. The oldest-looking male child, a bit heavy-set, with a gray hoodie on, approached the vehicle just in front of us, just in the front where the passenger headlight corner would be. My friend started really freaking out at this moment. He locked the doors and was like, hell no, we gotta go. Eventually the car starts. The children don't move and the kid stays put in front of the car. My friend eventually yells to the kid, I'm going to run you over. The boy slowly backs away, raises his arm, and points at us as we are leaving. I didn't look back. I am absolutely not making this up. To my recollection, this is a true story. AMA. Interesting. Regardless
that would be a very creepy encounter.
Listen, regardless of your situation, I don't want to see 4 to 5 kids that age range coming out of the woods on me at any time of day. Because that's just, that's a lot, man. Especially if they're all wearing hoodies and acting weird, you know. I don't know. That's
I wonder what the glowing was.
I like the glow sticks. I don't know.
there's
could've
always
just
often
been
this
glow sticks,
glowing, right? That's
right.
with the wood. There's always some type of
Orbs.
like orbs or these
Right.
hooded figures being seen with, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
orbs of light. I really believe that's another technology that we just aren't aware of. Like a clean energy
Right, yeah.
that we are not tapped into.
Or the free energy that the
Free-
government will not allow us
Yeah,
to tap into.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
That's that energy I want, right? Some of them Tesla coils.
Yeah. Huh. I've never put too much thought into black-eyed children. Maybe I should. Maybe I should look it up some. I don't know.
It's
That's
an
crazy.
interesting little phenomenon. It's
Huh.
you hear about it more than you would expect, right?
Yeah. Even if this did originally start as just some type of lore, right? Like some creepypasta type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that we can create things with our mind. Like
It would seem like it. It would seem
I really
as
think
though,
that our minds are extremely powerful.
Well, for one thing, you got a lot of the stories of crawlers, which seem very much to be almost
Right. That
like
was originally a
what is
like
that?
creepypasta thing, right? Right?
Yeah, or the rake, yeah, and also Slender
Right.
Man.
I mean, I
And
don't know if there's
even
really-
if he didn't really, hasn't really been cited, you got the Slender Man murders, right? Like the
Yeah,
little
but
kids
that's
that
just two little
claim
girls
they were-
that-
yeah.
or a few little girls. It was one of
I don't remember.
three at least.
Those some messed up
two
stuff.
of them, stabbed that poor girl.
Yeah.
That's crazy, the influence that things can have on young minds. It's really sad.
Yeah,
Let me pull this.
unfortunately,
Actually, let me
there's
look at what I have wrote down to see.
There's a lot of stimuli out there affecting the young people these days, and I didn't have so much of that growing up. We were kind of fortunate to not have so many of the outside factors just pushing down in on us. I feel
Right.
I just feel like there's a lot more is there since the internet. I'll say.
I mean, I think the internet is a great thing. It's something.
Absolutely, yeah. It's got some
beneficial.
great uses. I use
Absolutely.
it all the time for research and
Mm-hmm.
and that type of thing. But however,
There's also the negative stuff too.
it's not something you want to spend too much time with. I feel it's a lot of. I guess it's anything else you're gonna get out of it. What you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking to find something evil about the internet, you can certainly find it on there. But if you're looking to find good things you can do with it, you can find that with it too.
Yeah. Jeez, hold on. I didn't think I went that far for this story. Hold on.
I think
Maybe I did.
one thing I want to cover in a video, I really wanted to cover it in this one, but I cannot find anything on it. I'm going to go down to the local library here and see what I can find. I may even travel to the county where this occurred at and see if I can find it. There was supposedly a murder that took place.
You've told this before.
I have, but I can't find information on it. But a murder that took place in Rockcastle County involving a tombstone.
Can you
from a
even
grave.
find that about someone throwing one over?
No. There was a tombstone dropped off of a bridge that crossed over I-75. And I want to say this was 1996, if I'm not mistaken. And it hit a car and killed someone in the car. There was some very interesting synchronicities that took place with where this girl was buried, supposedly. I guess they were supposedly from Michigan, allegedly. But from what I hear, there's been a book wrote about it and everything, and I can't find the first piece of information on this. I don't know if somebody's tried to cover it up or if the internet is just so flooded with bullshit that you just can't find stuff anymore. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, though. But I'll let you go ahead. You have, one more, two more, maybe?
Yeah, I at least kind of, I guess.
Well, I'll let you go ahead
I'm going to read real quick.
and get this one out of the way. And I just got one more I really want to do.
All right. This is about a woman that has some type of encounter. Let's see. This is actually part of a newspaper newspaper thing as well, but it's her encounter stuff, whatever. Last month, this girl's name is Harriet McFeely. Last month, McFeely, 68, of Hastings, joined members of Sasquatch investigations of the Rockies and fellow guests in Southport, Colorado, on an investigative journey to encounter Bigfoot. Oh, come on now. And while she collected no definitive proof during her trip, save a few inconclusive snapshots of footprints found at their campsite and a forcefully disjointed deer bone believed to have been handled by one of the creatures, she is absolutely convinced that the beings she encountered during the expedition were Bigfoot. McFeely was invited to join members of SIR on the camping trip after befriending them during a Bigfoot conference in Oklahoma in April. During the 4-day outing in Colorado, she was startled awake in the wee hours of the morning by a thumping sound and observed what she described as a pair of adolescent creatures attempting to peek through the window of the tent of a fellow camper pitched just a few feet from her van. The following morning, footprints could be seen all around the perimeter of the campsite and beneath the tent's window. Sorry. I almost had a heart attack, she said. During a daytime hike, the campers observed dark figures appearing to sneak peeks at them from behind trees some 300 yards away. They would stand behind the aspen trees and sway back and forth, looking on one side of the tree, then looking back and forth, she said. The ones we saw were big boys, really, really stocky across the shoulders, probably twice as wide as a man. Perhaps the most intense encounter of them all occurred but a short distance from their camp. Minutes into a short stroll across the campsite meadow, in near total darkness, the campers encountered a colony of creatures standing 30 to 40 feet from them in front of a line of aspen and evergreen trees fronting a dense forest area. We stood there maybe 30 minutes, just watching them, she said. All of them were standing there in a row, their eyes glowing red, almost like when you put your car lights on a deer. It was the funniest sensation. Everybody kind of chuckled. Here we were, standing there, watching them, and they were standing there watching us. I never felt threatened or afraid. Despite across the globe, their existence is still largely questioned by society on the whole. That no clear universally accepted evidence of their existence exists suggests they are either fictional or very good at keeping a low profile. That hasn't kept scores of Bigfoot researchers from all walks of life from pursuing them, however. According to McFeely, presenters at the Oklahoma Bigfoot Conference, for instance, included an FBI crime investigator, a doctor, professor of sociology, and professor of environmental biology. To her, the Colorado outing fulfilled a long-standing dream of encountering the creatures up close and personal. I already believed anyway, but when I went to Colorado and saw all these things, it was just mind-boggling to me, she said. I'd go back tomorrow if I had the chance. She was recently invited to share details of her encounters with Bigfoot at the Bigfoot Conference and Mountain Music Festival in Oklahoma. She and her husband, Dick, have already made reservations. This was back in 2015. There's a lot to learn, she said. I know some people think there are a lot of kooks and hoaxes out there. In Oklahoma, all the speakers were professional people with impressive credentials. They weren't some nuts telling wild stories.
Also, a pretty good story about the dark figures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a colony of them.
Well, I mean, it's, I think a lot of these things probably run in, like, colonies.
Yeah, family groups.
Right.
At least.
I feel like maybe one or two probably hunt, and, you've got the ones that raise the young or gather plants, you know what I'm saying, berries, that type of thing.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, you would definitely have to have, what would you call them? certain ones that would go around the.
Watchers?
I guess you would say that, yeah, watchers.
I always thought that was a good word for it.
That is a adequate word to describe, right?
Mm-hmm. Day watchers?
Or like sentry. You need ones that were like sentry. That would go around and patrol.
Right.
You know, I have two more. One is something I initially wasn't gonna go over, but after I read it, it was just kind of something so unique and interesting, and I want to do it before my phone dies because I had to plug it.
Oh, okay, go for it.
And this one's off the website Phantoms and Monsters, which has a lot of good stuff. It says two friends are deer hunting in southern Louisiana. When they eventually meet up, the one hunter is in shock after witnessing a skinned man walking through the bayou. Weird account. This event happened to me and a friend from out of town that I had invited to go hunting one afternoon. This location was in southern Louisiana in an area with thick woods and a lot of palmettos up to 6 feet in height in some places. The water we had to walk in to get to my deer stands was up to our waist at times, so it was slow moving in the mile we had to walk to our deer stands. My friend wasn't used to this tough terrain, but he kept up, and when I got to the first stand, which was 15 feet off the ground with a ladder to climb, I don't understand why it ended there. Once he was up, I told him I would be by to pick him up in about a half hour after dark since I was a half mile past him. There was a full moon that was reflecting off the water, allowing us to hunt a few minutes longer. When it became too dark to see, I climbed down from my deer stand with my rifle on my shoulder and started walking slowly toward my friend to pick him up. When I was almost to his stand, I shined my light up, and he wasn't on the stand, so I shined my light on the ground at the bottom of the stand, and there he was leaning back against the tree. What was odd, he wouldn't look my way even after me calling his name. So I walked up to him within a couple feet and asked if he was ready to go. That's when he finally turned his head back and looked toward me, and when I saw his face scared me so bad that I took my rifle off my shoulder, putting it between me and him. His eyes were rolled back in his head, and his mouth was wide open, just looking at me, not saying a word, and not answering me. When I was asking what was wrong, he's looking at me if he was possessed or something. At this point, I was scared, so I finally slapped his face, and he snapped back to himself. I asked if he was okay. His only words were, "Let's get out of here now." So with me not knowing what the fuck was going on, I made him walk in front of me the whole way back to the truck. We got in and left without saying a word. I asked him what happened in the woods and why did he look shocked and possessed, and that's when he started crying and telling me how he was sitting there on the stand when he heard something coming through the water moving palmettos as it was walking. When he got close enough to see what it was, he said it was a man that looked like he had been skinned alive. He had no skin on him at all. He said he was so scared that after seeing this thing had passed him, he climbed down and hid under the stand against the tree so it wouldn't see him if it came back. He was in shock when I got to him. That's why he looked like he did. He was so shaken up and crying that I made him pull over for me to drive. Well, a week went by, and I was talking to my cousin who had gone on a tour at a nearby Indian memorial, and they were explaining how this Indian tribe would skin men of the tribe alive and turn them loose in the woods when they had committed a serious crime. My friend who had witnessed this skinned man a week earlier wasn't from around this area and had no way of knowing this. So what did he see that put him in shock? Was it a ghost of one of these Indians who was skinned alive years ago? I don't know. I just know the shape my friend was in when I got to him that night in the woods was something I'll never forget.
How long?
Yikes!
How long would someone survive? Would you after being skinned alive? Would you not bleed to death? Would you just wander around
I don't have much experience with skinning things. I don't know what the effects of that would be. It sounds horrifying.
I have to Google this really quick. Like, could one be skinned alive and live? How horrible!
So what do you think? This guy saw a ghost, or?
That's what it sounds like. Of the worst. That's terrible.
First of all, I don't know if you know much about scalping, but it's actually a horrible thing in itself. So if you think about it, it's just kind of a continuation of that type of ideology. Not my kind of thinking, but hey.
So the skin is there for a reason, and it really can't be removed without being considered a mortal injury. There just simply isn't a way to survive being skinned alive at the moment. Ah!
Well, I guess they probably didn't expect them to survive, is what I'm
Right,
thinking.
it probably
Like, it was
eventually
just like
die. You're just sent out, skinned,
like,
and
if
off.
you had done something less bad, we might go ahead and kill you quickly, but since you did what you did,
Slow, painful.
go ahead and walk around out there for a little while. I don't know. Sounds pretty horrendous. But I thought that was an interesting one.
It is.
You don't really hear too much about. You don't really get too much context with a lot of stories, right? Like that one is like a lot of stories you would have heard the first part, but you never would have heard like
Right.
the Indians used to do this to certain people who were accused of terrible things or whatever.
But
I
you're going to
thought that
encounter
was
a ghost
interesting because you kind of get some context.
of the worst kind. Almost.
So my last one tonight
Creepy.
is just something I found about some type of high strangeness.
Okay.
Sounds interesting. I haven't read it yet, so we're gonna discover this together. And I'm gonna end the night with this tale off Reddit from the user Contact Underground, and this was from 3 days ago, and it's under the subreddit, I guess, Experiencers. And it's titled Tales of High Strangeness. A series of high strangeness events occurred when I seriously doubted a fellow contact experience's veracity. An unseen, non-human intelligence seems to have taught me a lesson about its ability to make objects disappear. Author Jim Sparks tells me about cloaking, and then UFO Intel teaches me a lesson about a DMV code. Jay Burks, MD, 2017. By sharing this narrative, as in the words of the renowned remote viewer Ingo Swann in his book Penetration, I join a very long list of those that have seen and experienced things they cannot prove happened. In 2008, I attended the International UFO Congress in Nevada. I especially wanted to meet with author and contact experiencer Jim Sparks. His 2006 book, The Keepers, was intriguing. Unlike many in the doom and gloom alien abductionist camp, Mr. Sparks had some very positive things to say about certain ET groups, especially the much maligned so-called reptilian phenotype.
I like that stuff.
In The Keepers, Jim Sparks describes repeatedly being teleported into ET craft flying overhead. He called this shocking experience being taken the hard way. Over the years, I have heard similar stories from high-level contactees that I trust. However, because of concerns for their personal safety, I could not name them publicly or go into many of the specifics of their high strangeness encounters. Another UFO capability described by Jim Sparks is their alleged ability to cloak their presence and thus make it impossible for them to be seen. As I recall, he stated that a flying saucer could be parked on your home driveway and make itself invisible. His positive view of close encounters and his statement that he had been given a mission to bring people together around the issue of contact made me want to recruit him into our human-empowered contact network. My wife, Yale, and I drove across the desert from Los Angeles, and a few fellow contact activists joined us at the Congress to talk with him. After a presentation that was enthusiastically received by the assembled UFO fans, Mr. Sparks agreed to meet with us in a hotel room. There, I outlined my involvement in the loose network that I like to call the Contact Underground. Jim Sparks was tall, slender, well-dressed, and full of charm. I was pleasantly surprised to see him greet my wife, Yale, with a noble kiss on her hand. She didn't seem to mind either. I described my past involvement with CSETI's CE5 initiative and my ongoing work with the Peruvian contactees, now called Rama. Despite my best efforts to convince him to volunteer his time to help facilitate contact in a group setting under fieldwork conditions, I couldn't get him to commit. One of my co-workers, a young woman that I shall call Joni Krager, was also present in the hotel room to meet with Jim. Several weeks later, she reported having a long conversation with him on the phone. Joni told me that she was finally able to get out of him while he had no apparent interest in working with us. She said that he didn't want to join our network because his main goal, in her opinion, was to sell his story to Hollywood and have them make a movie about his contact experiences. I suppose that I shouldn't have been surprised. Living in Los Angeles, just a few miles from the entertainment capital of the world, I knew just how tempting it is to dream of fame and stardom. I must admit that I too have fantasized about my story being brought to the silver screen. Still, I was disappointed. I suppose that the negative emotion made me wonder whether some parts of Jim Sparks' book might have been exaggerated or perhaps totally made up. I remember specifically thinking that perhaps the ET's alleged ability to cloak their craft was also fiction. The next day, after speaking to Joni, I received a lesson from an unseen intelligence that I will never forget. I routinely get notification from California's Department of Motor Vehicles for my car registration renewals. It is a standard form that has a code with which one can pay online. The day following my thinking that Sparks' story about an invisible saucer, the day following my thinking that Sparks' story about an invisible saucer in his driveway was possibly bogus, I decided it was time to pay for my car registration.
Can you read, sir?
I think so. I'm going to continue. If I may. Let's see if I can do this. In front of my computer, I opened the DMV letter that had been sitting on my desk for weeks and placed it down with several other bills that needed to be paid. I glanced at the form, and there in the usual box on the left side of the form was my 6-digit code to pay online. I was distracted from my task for a few minutes when I sat down and picked up the form. There was something wrong. The code was no longer present in the appropriate box. I stared and stared at it, but the required numbers were simply not there. The space for the code was totally blank. I then imagined that I had placed the correct form with the code somewhere else in the house, and the piece of paper that I was looking at was some accompanying document from the DMV mailing. I searched all over the house and even complained to Yale how stupid I felt for misplacing the form. Confused, I repeatedly looked at the DMV form in my desk. There was no code in the box. The deadline was coming up in a few days. If I were going to avoid late fees, I'd better pay the bill and be done with it. After about an hour of going through all my paperwork around the house, trying to figure out what I could have done with the correct form, I sat down at the computer again and looked at DMV notice. To my utter surprise, the correct code was now visible in the box, when before it repeatedly appeared blank. I was astonished. I was left with the distinct impression that an unseen, non-human intelligence, presumably extraterrestrial, was confirming the accuracy of Jim Sparks' invisibility explanation, and it appears that they did so by showing me they could make the DMV code temporarily disappear. A month or two later, perhaps in case I didn't get the point, my card key for a motel room disappeared from the bedside table where I had placed it. It magically reappeared in the correct location on the night table the next day. In addition, I had missing time associated with this motel incident, and I experienced a kind of skyquake that hit my motel room as well. My interpretation of these high strangeness events is that an unseen, non-human intelligence, UFO intel, was telling me that indeed Jim's assertion on the invisibility issue was true. To make certain that I would get the point, the alleged ET staged 2 invisibility experiences for me. I end with another quote from Ingo Swann's Penetration. In the end, though, the authenticity of my personal, unprovable experience probably doesn't need to be considered that much, because the drift of accumulating information is inexorably leading to establishing the authentic existence of extraterrestrial intelligences anyway. Amen. Additional notes from the Contact Underground can be found at my website. And, yeah. That's a pretty interesting encounter. It's nothing, like, extraordinary. It's nothing really big, but it's just something so minute that, like, obviously this guy knows what he's talking about. He's looking at a form that has a number he needs.
Right.
And 1 second it's there and one's not. It's enough to make you think you're crazy.
What's weird is that I have a memory of something similar, but I don't know how to put the memory into words of, like, what it was. I remember, like, looking at something, like, I know that something is supposed to be there, but it's not. I don't know, but I don't know, maybe it's a dream I'm remembering, I don't know.
Dreams can be crazy. Anyway, that's all I got for the night. I'm going to end it on high strangeness. And, Yeah, I guess I'm gonna get out of here if you don't have anything else.
No, but I do want to look up some stuff about high strangeness later.
High strangeness.
Yeah, maybe I can find some
It's a large,
stuff to talk
large
about.
portion of my life. Well, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for tuning in with us tonight.
Whoop.
Make sure you subscribe. If you want to email us, send it to
Sure.
hillshadowsky@yahoo.com, and we'll see you next week. I think I got that in
I
there.
didn't get to say my bye. That's okay.
Well, you still audio rolling.
Oh, bye.
So I can add a picture in to keep it going. You know what I'm saying? Get it in.
Goodness, I already did it.
In case you didn't hear us, I said have a wonderful weekend. And Ashley, as always,
Bye.
later.